Hello and welcome to the Haunted Book Club. This is book club number 3. Well, it's the chat part of number 3. And today the book club theme is The Eyes by Edith Wharton. Now, we will be talking about this, and this story is 116 years old, but there are spoilers ahead. So if you're listening to this back, read the story, you can pause it here. If you go back one podcast on this feed, I've read it to you. It's not a particularly good one for reasons. So pause it here, go and listen to that or read it and then come back. My name's Gav Cross, and I'm a storyteller. And guess what that was, John?
Was that the cork coming out of your bottle of wine?
Did you hear a big bang then, everybody? That was the cork bursting out of a bottle of Prosecco.
Yeah.
And
you doubted me. You doubted me.
And for anybody, because this is live, you're listening to back of your podcast, so we won't dwell on this too long. I might even cut it. There's a pre-live section, and my cork broke, and I held a lighter, and John said it would pop out, and I doubted him, and 58 minutes later, it happened. Anyway. Okay. I'm Gav Cross, storyteller, and who do we have here?
I'm John Reppion, and I'm an author and word botherer of some kind.
A word botherer. Yes, I've popped my cork. Let's move on. So you're all very welcome. This is how it works. We're going to be talking about The Eyes by Edith Wharton. Give us a very quick introduction to The Eyes by Edith Wharton. But whilst you do that, people that are here live, the question I'm going to ask you, those of you who've read it or listened to it, was The Eyes by Edith Wharton a woohoo? Woo-hoo, a brilliant story? You enjoyed it? You got a lot from it? Or was it a boo-hoo? It wasn't for you for whatever reason. And that's what we'll crack into after. So type it in now. Was it a woohoo or was it a boo-hoo? Yes, we are that reductive. Quick introduction, John.
So, The Eyes by Edith Wharton. The aging Mr. Andrew Colwyn recounts a strange story from his younger days, how he was at different times haunted by a strange vision of a pair of awful eyes, red-rimmed eyes with an expression of vicious security, whose unseen owner seemed to Colwyn to be a man who had done a lot of harm in his life. What caused the vision? What was its meaning? And even in his old age, is Colwyn truly free from the awful gaze of the eyes?
There we go. Okay. So we've got some responses coming in, and I love them. Claire's coming in with woo boo, which is a half and half, which suggests to me that it's like, woo boo. Barry fell asleep during my reading. There's nothing more relaxing than being read to, or it was very boring. A boo-hoo from Rachel, a boo-woo from Claire. We got the inverse of the woo-boo. We've got a boo-woo. So we might need to categorize this. A woo-hoo from Chris, a boo-woo from Katie, and a boo-boo, which I think is a small bear from Annie. If you're old. Okay, so we've got a good mix, and I like that because we can't do a story every week that everyone's going to like, and that's what a book club is about. It should be a nitty-gritty chat, and maybe you liked it and we'll put you off, or vice versa. Claire has changed their mind to woo-boo-woo. What a journey. But so in the meantime, while you're pulling together your thoughts and arguments, John's dead talk. Tell us about this story.
So Edith Wharton, I'll start off by talking a bit about Edith Wharton, because I think in this story, I know that I always go on about the authors quite a lot, but I think that it's important to understand a bit about the author for context of this story. So Edith Wharton was an American poet and author. She was born in 1862. She grew up in upper-class New York society in what was called the Gilded Age. So it was this age where some people had an awful lot of money and lived a high life, but also there was terrible poverty. So they were living this kind of um, late Victorian, very posh lifestyle. A lot of the Americans, while at the same time there were a lot of people living below the poverty line. Her unmarried name was actually Edith Jones, and the Jones family was so wealthy that apparently they're the Joneses in Keeping Up the Joneses, which both Gav and I were. Thought was a good little like QI type fact. So Wharton's best known today, or possibly best known today, for her ghost stories, but also for her novel, The Age of Innocence, which earned her a Pulitzer Prize in 1921, making her the first woman to ever win the award. Now, Edith wrote her first novel at the age of 11, but her mother basically told her it was rubbish, which seems harsh, but I think it's relevant. Edith's mother, Lucretia, died in 1901 when Edith was 29 years old, and Edith's first novel, The Valley of Decision, came out in 1902. So it feels like that was something that she actually hung on to. So far as her family knew, Edith turned to poetry after her mother's criticism of her first novel, but she did actually continue to write prose in secret. She had some early quiet success with her poetry, and some works were published under her own name, some pseudonymously, some anonymously. Despite this, she wasn't really encouraged by her family or her friends to pursue her writing, especially not her novel writing. It wasn't until her late 20s she started to have short stories published, and as I said, not until she was nearly 30 that she began to venture back into novels properly. So, The Eyes is a story all about men, told from the perspective of men, with the framing device of the cozy ghost story chat over drinks and cigars. And it's easy to forget as you're reading the story or listening to it that it's a story written by a woman. And because of that, I feel that The Eyes is sometimes interpreted or examined in a way that sort of overlooks or at least underplays Wharton's own voice and her possible intent, her experience, really. She was well aware of professional idlers like Andrew Colwyn and the world in which they inhabited, but she wasn't one of them. She couldn't be one of them, but she could see them for what they were. So The Eyes is also often interpreted as a story with a gay subtext. It's not really much of a subtext, to be honest. The differences between how Colwyn talks about his one-time almost fiancée, Alice Noel, how he talks about her cousin Gilbert Noyes doesn't leave much to be interpreted. Alice leaves him utterly cold, while Gilbert is so beautiful that Colwyn is utterly obsessed with keeping him near him, even though he is, by Colwyn's own admission, a talentless fool with delusions of grandeur. Colwyn is, of course, responsible in no small part for encouraging the delusions, whilst inwardly thinking how foolish and gullible the young man is, and ultimately growing to resent him because of that. We learn in the introduction of the story that Colwyn was once thought of as an attractive man himself, but his young friends can hardly believe it, except for Phil Frenham, who is noted as the most youthful and juicy of his friends. He likes them juicy. I really don't exactly know what that means, but obviously I do know what that means. But I don't really know what juicy would have meant then.
I don't think it would have meant much different.
No, I don't think that. I don't think we're misunderstanding it. Frenham is, of course, to some degree under the same spell that Noyes was. He's charmed and flattered by Colwyn's attention. He sees the old man differently to the framing text's unnamed narrator until at last he doesn't. So, is Colwyn a talented man? Has he done anything to earn or deserve the life he's led? He mentions novels and books that he's been working on throughout the story, but he admits that he can't remember what they were supposed to be about. There's nothing to suggest that he's ever had anything of note published, or that he has any more talent than Noyes does, really. What he does have is money, enough money to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, to disappear to Europe for years at a time, to travel. Lack of money on Noyes' part is really the only thing that triggers their ugly breakup. Colwyn thinks that the young man should sacrifice anything and anything in order to make sure that he has a steady, lifelong income. But there's no evidence that Colwyn has given up anything or worked in any way for his own money. And again, I think we need to think about Edith Wharton herself, as the author here, she came from money, obviously. She married into more money, but she was driven to create things, to write things. She used the opportunities that she had, and she had plenty of opportunities, a lot more than most, admittedly. But, to become the first woman to win a Pulitzer Prize, what does Colwyn do with his opportunities? He has no obstacles before him at all. People defer to him and his judgment. People believe he's important and that he has like wisdom to impart, and he becomes this venerable old gentleman, ultimately, who can command this regular audience. Why? What's he done to deserve any of this? He never asks himself this, but the tale he tells willingly makes him seem like he's never done or achieved anything at all. But he's a rich old man, and rich old men are allowed to do as they please. So Colwyn is very obviously adverse to any kind of entanglement with women. His almost engagement is something that frightens him enough to change the course of his life. Marriage, the ultimate inevitable outcome of any match between a man and a woman in Colwyn's world, is basically a financial transaction, either as a means of bettering oneself or marrying into a richer family, or shoring up the legacy of two already well-to-do families. Colwyn has no need to do either of those things. So while he's much more interested in beautiful young men, I'm not sure that the often floated idea that The Eyes is this story about repressed homosexuality, or the shame of being a gay man in 1910 really makes that much sense, because he doesn't seem to be a man who's forced into this situation by not being able to live the life that he wants to live. I think that Wharton herself has basically written him as a rich arsehole who could afford to surround himself with anyone he felt amused by. And the fact of the matter is that men are much easier for him to discard and disentangle himself from once he gets bored of them, at a very basic level anyway. It's part of his self-centeredness rather than this story of somebody who deserves your sympathy. There's nothing in the text, to me anyway, that feels sympathetic towards Colwyn, and it's a story told by him. So, possibly this is too early to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would say that The Eyes isn't really a ghost story. It's a criticism of this kind of rich idler who was being fawned over by Wharton's own social circles, but it uses the framework and the format of this classic gentlemen telling each other ghost stories after supper while they smoke and drink. The trick of the story is that Colwyn thinks he's telling us a ghost story, and he says repeatedly he doesn't know the meaning of The Eyes. He doesn't know. He's literally saying, if you can find some meaning in it, then you tell me. And the telling of the story accidentally reveals the truth to us all and to the listeners, and eventually to himself. So the horror's revealed when everything slots into place. It's clear that everything that's happened is connected and is absolutely Colwyn's fault. He is the man who had done a lot of harm in his life, and he's unwittingly allowed himself to be perceived by Phil Frenham, who cannot stand to look at him, and accidentally he perceives himself. So the eyes are his own eyes.
Okay, thank you, John. That genuinely really very interesting, and you painted that picture. But first of all, I'm going to declare that this story is a woohoo for me. It's a story I've read before. It's a story I nominated. I find this story very funny. I'd like to think it's knowingly funny, because she's a very funny arch writer anyway. And her other ghost stories, there's a humour to them as well. I like, because he's haunted by a very childish fear, a thing that appears at the end of the bed. Whether it's the monster under the bed, or the thing that appears at the end of the bed, and it's the eyes that stare. All right. So while we kind of unpack that a bit more, now's your time to write your response. Those of you here, those of you book clubbers that are here, tell me what you think in 1, 2, 3 sentences, a paragraph. Write it. It gives us something to jump off. It's not all just about us. While you're doing that typing, John and I will keep talking. All right. So I'm also going to discuss this from the perspective, a declared perspective of a boring middle-aged heterosexual old man. To me, I've checked this phrase with someone more informed than I, younger than me. It is a very queer-coded novel of its time, 126 years old. There's so many novels of those times, novelette story. No, it wasn't a novel, story of those time. Through from Victorian through Edwardian, where that is not unusual. Back through to the medieval. Gawain and the Green Knight. So obviously, so it's one of those comedies of society that I love. That's why I love E.F. Benson as well. And I also love it because our central character is so unlikable. I love a central character that's so unlikable and then ultimately irredeemable. I know Scrooge goes on a journey and we start hating him, but this character in his short journey he's horrible. Oh, he's really horrible. Yeah, he's horrible. So I really like that. I really liked how, as I say, the spookiness of these eyes that return. And if you have read the story, there is a kind of suggestion. Do you agree with me or not that the eyes are his eyes that he can see? That he as a young man sees his eyes as the eyes of this old red. Maybe I'll read a little section, a description. That's the wrong book. It's not, the eyes is not in that book because I lost everything after. Yeah, it's on the floor next to the bottle that popped. Boom, boom, boom. So, I also highlighted juicy. They were the worst eyes I've ever seen. A man's eyes, but what a man! My first thought was that I avoided the American accent, even though I know this is a kind of drawl. My first thoughts was that he must be frightfully old. The orbits were sunk. The thick red lidded hung over the eyeballs like blinds of which the cords are broken. One lid drooped a little lower than the other, with the effect of a crooked leer, and between those pulpy folds of flesh, with their scant bristle of lashes, the eyes themselves, small glassy discs with an agate-like rim about the pupils, looked like sea pebbles in the grip of a starfish. Old men's eyes. John, I never really had that much going for me when I was young. Right? No, it's true. No, it's true, John. But I had eyes, yeah, and people said they were nice eyes. And now when I look at my eyes, I see them as pulpy and red rimmed. And from now on, I'll see them as agate stones in the grip of a starfish. They're my eyes. The Colwyn character is my age. He's seeing his aged old man's eyes, haunted by the future that he has created. How are your eyes holding up, John? They sparkle whenever I see you.
I mean, I can't see very well out of them, but I think they're all right.
Fair enough. Let's see. Claire P liked / loved the story, but Boo comes in how much you dislike Colwyn. Okay, fair enough. I'll hold that. Definitely some vampire Dorian Gray vibes, but he had no charisma for me. But I'm not his target. I think that was the point. I think he's just a terrible person who's self-centered. I mean, these are all things that I consider about myself. But I don't think we're supposed to like him. Do you think it's a moral story? It's like you're going to be haunted if all you think about, if all your actions are driven by your own. Him not telling the young man who's a terrible writer he's a terrible writer was a selfish act. So if you're going to be a terrible person.
It's we had a little chat about this today, didn't we? And I think another part of why the story works so well, once you have the context, is that Wharton was writing her ghost stories. This collection came out before her novels came out, and the thing about ghost stories where they were looked down upon, especially by the sort of person who Colwyn is. So the idea that you've written a little book of ghost stories, have you? You know, I must read it, and nobody, that sort of person, isn't going to read it. And actually, to make one of the stories about one of these people who pretends that they're an expert in everything and actually just idles around when she's actually written this book. It is almost the kind of this fantastic, trap that remains unsprung. It's like if they would have bothered to read the story, they'd have seen that it was actually about one of them. So I really like the
Yes.
idea of that.
It's a social critique, isn't it? Okay,
Yeah,
Chris. Yes, Chris says, I thought the description of the eyes was brilliant. Great background and facts there, John. I had a quick scan of her bio and saw that she had an affair a few years before. So is there something about the guilt she may have been feeling? Well, can I posit an out there theory? Can I do that? Am I allowed to do that for no reason? If you go to Wikipedia, so what's the name of the woman that he spurned?
Alice. Alice No.
In Wikipedia, she is listed as Edith Newbold Wharton. Newbold and Knoll, that's quite close. Was she writing about some arch horrible fella who rejected her? I don't know. I don't know where it's come from. Someone has spoken to me about
Yeah,
it.
it's possible. Yeah, it's
Who knows?
absolutely possible.
But I do think there's a biographical element. I think she's writing, like you said, about the people she knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, these awful people. So,
It would almost be funnier if it was just specifically about one person,
yeah,
and
but
then you found
that
out who
happens.
that person was. Yeah,
That
yeah,
happens in literature. But disregard all of that because that's just all supposition. But it's a flip of what Chris was saying. It feels so long ago that I read the start of the book, says the Satsuma, Claire, who's also a Satsuma, that I'd forgotten the eye description. It's a good one. It's a good one, and they do feel like mine. Rachel says I really struggle to visualize the story, and we talked about this last time, didn't we? About how some people really see things and others it's different. It's about the word,
yeah,
which is a bad start for me. Had to reread the story a few times. That's commitment to just understand what had even happened. Obviously, very much disliked Colwyn, and I just didn't care about the outcome at all. That's interesting because this buys into another theory I have about ghost stories. I really love them. You know that I love them, John.
yes, I do.
But I think a lot of ghost stories, short ghost stories, have bad endings.
Yes, yeah, they do.
However, I also think lots of novels have very unsatisfying endings.
Yeah,
And lots of TV series have, because creators don't necessarily know how to end things because they don't want to. I don't know. I had to reread the ending a couple of times myself to work out that Phil Frenham is like, oh no, he's a monster.
yeah,
And
yeah. Well, the framing device is. I don't want to say it's clunky because I think it's done deliberately because it is one of those. Uh, it's parodying that sort of story where the gentlemen
yeah,
all tell those stories, kind of thing. But
yeah,
it does feel a bit ungainly, and then when you pop back out into it, you kind of forget that was how you started, and forget
yeah.
who the other people are. There,
The frame is forgotten, isn't it, for the actual
yeah,
story that's being told? Which I think is like reflects that the story that Colwyn is telling is an interesting one. We get lost into it. Plot twist, says Joe. I know we can do that because what they're going to do? They can't sue us. We can just make things up. We can just make things up like lots of literary critics do. And Claire, the Satsuma, says, I also didn't realise the story had finished at the end. I understand. It didn't feel like an end, so I reread that bit a few times. As I said, as did I. It wasn't fully straightforward. But I've just finished a big book that I loved, and I had to read the last chapter twice because I think I didn't want it to end how it ended. And I had to work out what I'd missed. So I listened to the last chapter and I reread it myself. Exactly my issue, Claire. Even rewound Gav a few times. That happens to me professionally. to reread it to me a few times. It's my pleasure. But could you not call me at 4 a.m? I'm sure it must. I'm sure it must have disturbed Stu as well. If you don't know, I read every story for you. Chris says he's awful, but the humour of the writing and of his pretensions make him feel like almost like a sitcom rogue. Agreed. He is awful. I do like him as a character. Sort of villainous Charles Pooter. Ooh. Tell me who Charles Pooter is, because I should know. I know it's another. Is that an Evelyn Waugh character? I don't know. I'm not that as well read. Claire says, have you ever read a ghost story that broke your heart because you loved the character so much? Or is this always a way to tell a moral about horror tale? Yes. I've read a couple like that I think Edith Nesbit writes stories with characters. We're looking at Man Sized in Marble. I think there's a little bit in there. Yeah, I think we've only looked at a couple. But here's the thing, Claire. John and I have decided on these first 6 stories to get us going. If we choose to carry on, then we want you to pick the stories. So maybe there's some
Yeah,
that you
absolutely.
with characters you've fallen in love with. I've seen a film that broke my heart at the end, but not a book. Rachel, I cry at the start of films. If I'm in the cinema, it makes me cry. I saw Project Hail Mary this weekend, and that made me cry. Claire Satsuma says Pooter is Diary of a Nobody, Diary of a Noober. Charles Pooter, Diary of a Nobody.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know who wrote that. Claire knows it. Is that that's
There
not
is
Wells? No.
there's a graphic novel of Diary of a Nobody coming out, apparently.
Okay.
Hey.
So some more thoughts and comments from you. We want you. The ticket price alone makes me cry. I've got cinema card. More thoughts and criticisms, because as I say, we can't pick something you're going to like every time. Every time. But were there any bits that you did like? I loved the humor in it, and I think the humor comes from I could visualize this one, and I saw this horrible Colwyn character. I might have seen myself, but
I think
I
we need to
love.
pick some stories that you can't imagine that them being about you. You thought you were Edgar Allan Poe last time.
I do feel a bit Edgar Allan Poe-ish at times. So you know that famous line about from Christmas Carol, something of the grave or the gravy.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
that notion of, is it the ghost or is it just indigestion? I loved that echo in here when he's like, of course they're not show ghosts. A collector wouldn't think anything of them. Don't let me raise your hopes. Their one merit is their numerical strength. And he goes on and says, um, only as I never could make up my mind whether to go to the doctor or the oculist, whether I was afflicted by an optical or a digestive delusion. So it is that same echo of, which would have been 70 years on of, but she would have been very aware of it. A Christmas Carol, something of the grave or the gravy. I've frozen, but I don't think I have on there.
You're all
Can't
right
remember
now.
who wrote it. It was a freebie on my first ebook read. That's a long time ago. Absolutely. Now, could you let me know if this was a new story to you, or is there anybody here who's read this before? I've got this very cheap version. They do quite a few. Is it Wordsworth edition? The Ghost Stories of Edith Wharton. There's some great stories in there. I've read a few of them already.
It was actually my first time reading it, although I was aware of it, and as I dug into it, I was like, I don't actually think I know this one. I knew what the main thrust of it was. Possibly I'd read about it in, something that was talking about some of the best ghost stories, but I don't think I had read it before, so it was a new one to me. And I think I've definitely read other of her stories. I can't think which other ones of her stories I've read either. She's just one of those names, isn't she? That's in all the good old ghost story collections.
So Claire says, can't remember who wrote it. Claire, the Satsuma is a freebie on first book, so she got it free. And then Claire Pitt says, new to me, 49 pence on my Kindle. New to Anne, new to Claire Satsuma, 89p. New to Rachel, first Edith Wharton story, because we will be returning to Edith, a different Edith soon. Hadn't read it, but wouldn't mind reading more after that. Yeah. Now, I don't know how this works. I don't have an e-reader, but all the stories we're reading are available on Gutenberg. And Gutenberg have files that are downloadable to readers for free. So if you do Google, and I tried to put a link to Gutenberg in the post because it has those downloadable options. So every story is available free to you, and I think there was even PDF. So I'm brilliant. It's brilliant that you have spent some money on this. Don't spend money because every one of these stories will be freely available. So check them out online for free, maybe. Don't let me tell you what to do. You spend your money your way. Gutenberg is great, says Claire, but prefer the formatting on my Kindle. Yes, the other Claire forgot about Project Gutenberg. All right then. Okay, so how do we classify this story? Chris Williams did get Steve Gutenberg to read it to him. That's great.
I knew he
Um,
wouldn't be able to resist a mention of Steve Gutenberg. I could feel
well,
it happening.
the award nominated, I can't remember if he won, Chris Williams, cartoonist and very funny gentleman. How does it classify? Now, the classifications as we have them, and I should put this in the chat: classic ghost story, haunted house or place, physical creature or monster, cursed or haunted object, weird fiction, demonic or otherworldly, psychic or spiritualist, not necessarily paranormal, an unreliable narrator. How would you categorize it? Start typing now. Don't change your mind when I ask John. How do you characterize it, John? Because you said, like I've said about other stories, it wasn't a ghost story.
No, I don't think that it's. I don't think that it's a ghost story. Although, when there's the bit with the description of the eyes initially, she does a really good job of making it a ghost story. But ultimately, it's he's an unreliable narrator, isn't he? Really, it's the story he's telling is not really a story of a ghost at all. It is the eyes that are seen at the end are really just a reflection of his eyes. So it's all in his head. If we had a psychological one, I suppose we could have it as that. But yeah, he's an unreliable narrator. Although, in a sense, he's too reliable a narrator, isn't he? He sort of is more reliable than he intends to be. But I think in the classifications that we've got, I think we've got not really a good story, unreliable narrator, with the framework of a classic ghost story.
Well, other people are saying weird fiction, which is what I think. Weird fiction, it's Twilight Zone, not necessarily paranormal, an unreliable narrator, not necessarily paranormal, not necessarily paranormal, weird fiction. I think it's a weird fiction. I actually do think he sees the eyes. Even if I think he is haunted by the eyes. I do. I think it's but not necessarily a time slip as we talked about with other stories, but that these aging eyes reflecting on the life he's lived, and was it a good one?
Mm.
They're judgmental. It's quite biblical in its sense of a reflective, judgmental set of eyes. The eyes, the windows on the soul, and his
Yeah.
soul is plainly just a very self-centered one. But maybe, as I say, it's because I feel I've got a very old, tired, red-rimmed thin. I used to have beautiful eyelashes, John. So when
You've
I
got
read
lovely
that,
eyebrows now.
I've got the eyebrows, yeah. But when I read that about the thinned out eyelashes, and I made that connection, it's like, yeah, people used to comment on my eyelashes, John, and now they're just like limp and barren, like a dying forest on the edge of an industrial estate.
I'm really worried about what's going to happen with the next story now. I feel like I've got to vet them for whether they're going to Whether you're going to relate
I think
too hard to them.
all good book clubs are borderline therapy. All right, then. So the other categories that we look for is we're very reductive and we score this. So I want you to give me a score out of 5. Though I've consulted because the idea of turning this into top trumps means we should be doing it out of 100. I am Cole. You can call me Cole Wincross, and I do like them juicy. By that I mean satsumas. No, oranges. No, grapes. Wine. I said satsuma because I've got satsumas downstairs, and then I remembered, John, we've got Claire satsuma, so that
Yeah.
came across as really weird and quite awkward. Claire says in USA you can get eye drops which are prescribed for glaucoma. They make your eyelashes grow long and luscious. What? Why would you want to stick something in your body that makes another part of your body grow? It's like it's what was that little baby bio for eyelashes? God. Yeah, they have transferred up to my eyebrows. Right, okay. So we're going to categorize, and this is out of 5. It is lucky you missed it. The scare factor. How scared were you when you? How did this scary story scare you? How much? Out of 5, 5, ah, and 1. Yeah, 5, 1. Okay, so how scary was it? Scare factor score. The creep factor score. This is when you were reading it. Where did it get into your marrow? Did it freeze your spine? Did you consider your own mortality? Were you lost in the reverie of the metaphysical? So how creepy was it as a creep factor? And satisfaction level. Was it a story that stayed with you? Is it a story that made you think? Is it a story that you went away and thought, "Oh no, I need to know more about that"? Was it a story that made you? So, how satisfying was it as an experience of a piece of reading? So, scare factor, creep factor, satisfaction level out of 5. What about you, John? Stick your neck out.
Well, I mean, it's only really got one scary bit, hasn't it? I think it's supposed to have 2 scary bits. The ending isn't that scary. But I do think the original appearance of the eyes is scary. So I think on balance, out of 5 is like a 2.
A 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say, yeah, it wasn't that scary. And I don't think anybody found it very scary. Um, quite low scores. 1, 3, 0 from Rachel, which I respect. 0.125 from Barry, which I don't respect. Round it up to 2 decimal places. 3 decimal places, Barry. That's just too far. 2 decimal places, perfectly reasonable. So I'm going to round that up. It's 1 point. It's a 5, so it's a 1.8. I don't know maths. Creep factor very low for people. 0.5, 1, 2. I found it quite creepy because I didn't know what was going to happen to him because it was such a that there was, and I didn't know what was going to happen to Alice. It was Alice who I was worrying about the most all the way through. I thought Alice was going to do something silly based on this awful man. So that was what made me feel tense all the way through. I don't know what happened to Alice, but I don't think anything. Perhaps she moved on very quickly, and he's the one who's still obsessed. But I was
Yeah.
worried that Alice would do something bad. Nobody else seemed to care about Alice. That's fair enough. Fair enough. Satisfaction, again, it's coming at Claire Pitt, 4. Chris, 4. Claire S, 2. Rachel, 1. Barry, 2.45545. So that's 2.46. Juice factor. How juicy was the story, John? Where are we at
Very,
juice factor?
it was very juicy indeed. Quadruple strength juice.
Yeah, I do love finding neurodivergent coded, queer coded, fun coded things, comedy coded things in places where, like, the average, I would accept that to be the truth, thinker would think it wouldn't be there. So, when in this world we live in where people like rejecting, it's like being LGBTQ plus is supposed to be a brand new woke thing when it's been part of my life, not personally, but around my life for as long as I can imagine. And it's embedded in reportage storytelling since the beginning of time. So I do enjoy that. I think Alice saw right through him. Well, Rachel, I hope that too. I mean, we don't know. But we hope that. She did send her cousin to him. So, yeah, I'm going to go with you, Rachel. Yeah, she saw through him. Yeah, she's fine. Alice is fine. I don't know why I'm worried about her. She's fine. Maybe Alice knew what she was doing when she sent him over. That's Chris is saying it more eloquently. What the deuce was said quite a lot. Very Bertie Wooster. Yeah, so that's why I didn't worry about doing an English accent. Yeah, what the deuce? Can we bring that back, John?
What the deuce?
As a phrase. Because if we say it in a particular way, we're bringing back what the deuce. But if we actually pronounce it what the juice, then we're saying it's juicy. We could be like a private language.
It's a new thing, yeah. Well, the problem is, of course, I can't pronounce the word deuce and juice noticeably differently. Very much like I can't pronounce the word fairy, like a thing that flies around with wings, or a thing with fairy. They're the same thing.
All right, Ken
It's
Dodd
just...
with the Beatles. John,
So I can't...
John is pure Liverpudlian. If you can't tell. Yeah, the story was quite juicy. Yes. Yes, we'll bring it back. What the juice? I'm going to try and introduce it. That's your challenge. Please try and introduce it between now and the end of the week. All right. Right, John, we're coming towards the end. Any final comments or questions? If you want to ask a question about anything we've discussed, but now's your time to type it out. And then we kind of draw this to a close. And then we have a section, very short section after this called the Afterlife, which doesn't go into the saved part at all. All right. So what's next, John? What story's next?
Next time we are going to be doing it on the Monday, not the Tuesday. So that is very important. Next time we go live, it's going to be Monday the 30th. So hopefully that's going to be all right with all the book club members. So yeah, Monday the 30th, not Tuesday the 31st. And we're going to be talking about Spinach by E.F. Benson, which is a story about Ludovic and Sylvia Byron, who are brother and sister, and they're also mediums. Whether their powers are real or not, or whether they're just using them to make money, is a matter of some debate. They go on holiday together, and it gives them unexpected opportunity to test their psychic abilities. So it's a really good, funny, proper E.F. Benson story that we both are big fans of.
I love E.F. Benson, Mappa Nuccia novels we talked about. Okay, so that's the 30th, which is a Monday, not a Tuesday. We're both freelancers. There are things we need to do at certain times. So it's 2 weeks minus 1 day. Rather than it being a Tuesday, it's going to be the Monday. But you'll see about that. All right, then. Looking forward to that. Love E.F. Benson. I love E.F. Benson. Right, we're coming to an end now. Thank you for joining us, book clubbers. Thank you for your contributions. We're going to be asking whether we continue these and what stories we do next. That's going to be introduced soon. And we've got the live gigs booked. There are 4 live things we've got in pipeline, possibly 5, aren't we? But the 4 confirmed. We're going to be at Norton Priory with the change date. We're going to be at the Portico Library. And those have specific stories because both stories are linked to the spaces. We're going to be going to Blooming Skull Coffee in Bebbington on the Wirral. And we're also, and I don't think we've said this publicly anywhere else, we're going to be part of Weird Wirral. Tell us about that, John.
Yeah, so it's a little festival that's going on at the Bidston Observatory, which is an incredible, strange, fantastic space up on Bidston Hill, and it's going to be a whole day of people doing performances and things, and we're going to be doing a little haunted book club as part of that. So yeah, that is
And
on the 1st
we've
of
got
August, I believe.
1st of August, and we'll put that out there. And if you like weird, folkloric events, I think it's very reasonably priced for the day. Anyway, and then there's a special possibility coming up soon. And that's really the end of the recorded part of Haunted Book Club. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Gav, for having me.
Well, I think we have each other, and that's what's nice. But are you Frenham or are you Colwyn?
I do like them juicy.
So the next story is leave that hanging. Is Spinach
Yeah.
by E.F. Benson, and on this feed next Monday there will be a recording of me reading it to you, or you can find it yourself and read it for yourself. Right then, okay, let's say bye-bye, everybody, and if you're going to stick around for the afterlife, we'll be here for a few more minutes afterwards. Thank you very much for your support. We never intend to charge for the online that we do. There's no kind of secret for what you have to pay for stuff. Obviously, we have to charge tickets if you come to our lives. But if you want to support us, you can come along. You can do the like. You can do the subscribe. You can tell people about it. If you had a nice time, if you had a terrible time, if you do not think this has any quality to it, keep your mouth shut. Other than that, thank you very much and goodbye. Goodbye, John.
Goodbye.